Okay,
No.
I'm very sorry about that. Apologies for all the messing around, and thank you very much. For those that have joined us, again, thank you, welcome. Just also to let you know that for those that weren't here at the beginning, Baya's a little bit under the weather, so I apologise for the coughing that might happen. So we are going to ask you to participate as much as we are doing the talking. So thank you. Let Baya carry on.
Okay, so we were saying, or I was saying, we were basically, I was trying to say to you that when we started putting together the week 3 of the School of Open course, and we started thinking about open dissemination, we were always talking about things from the experience that we've had at the OER Research Hub. But in a way, we decided which topics we could cover in a week that would be interesting for people. And so the first thing that we decided to talk about was the idea of open access and the difference between green open access and gold open access. So that's part of the first activity that we asked you to do during the week. I don't know whether you had a chance to actually post anything in the forums, uh, but yeah. So that's the first thing that I would ask you. Think about yourselves as researchers from your own point of view, right? So which do you think which one would you favor if you weren't? Because I'm thinking probably that you all have an institution behind you, right? So maybe I'm not right in taking that for granted, but just think about it. To what extent would you be happy to pay for your research to be published, so that others can access it? And Guy says no. No institution. Okay, right. I was thinking, I wasn't sure what that no was. So yes, Camille, do tell me. So, Guy says no. Do you say no to no institution, or do you say no to open access, or what do you say no to?
For myself, I'm not particularly attached to any institution, and well, although I might come in and out of that, but so I haven't done research really kind of like this before, and to me, I mean the whole idea of publishing and everything is fairly new anyway, so the colours is new, but I don't really know how it usually works, or like the old practice, so I actually found it a little hard to extricate what it really all meant. And I also thought this is surely up for reinvention as an individual, because my projects are always very individual and I have to create the parameters anyway. So I thought it was very interesting to have all these options to look at.
Yes. Yes, that's true. I'm not. I don't think. I speak to you from my own experience. I don't think it is a necessary to understand really open access, or green open access and gold open access. The way I understand it, green open access is to do with self-archiving. So you do have you publish when it is an institutional repository or an open repository. You share like some kind of a version of a paper you published if it is a paper that we talk about. While gold, what you do is you publish in a fully open journal, like fully open websites, and in some cases authors may need to pay. Although my understanding is that payment actually very rarely comes from the author themselves, but it is actually the institution that takes that course. But then again, it's not. I don't know. I might be completely wrong. I find it a little bit complicated, right? So
you might have to speak up a little bit.
sorry,
The sound is a little bit wobbly, so you might have to speak up
oh,
a little
right.
bit.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. No. So let's go back. If you're if you don't have the support of an institution behind you, we've already heard Eleanor talking about how she was very well like green open access. What about the rest of you? Guys said you would never pay. Is that right?
I don't think I said I wouldn't pay. I said as a private individual, I would much prefer the open journal approach because then I just have free access. But rather than talk gold and green, which I get confused about, I mean, somebody like Martin Weller, what does he use when he talks about publishing openly?
Well, we don't have Martin Weller here right now, but the one thing that Martin, I don't know, how does Martin?
Partly through his blogging, partly through, again, it's just having that network of connection, isn't it?
I'm not I don't know exactly how many papers has Martin published in the last while. What I do know is that he's very active as a blogger, and he'll be blogging all the time, basically what ideas come to his head, and he'll invite comments from everyone. And in fact, actually, I think it's something that makes sense. You have to think, for some people, whether you have to think about when you want to share and what you want to share. In the case of you have you've written a paper and then you want to publish it, all right, okay, that's great. You can go and publish it in any journal that you like. But if you're really into sharing your research, then you shouldn't really. This is my personal view. Okay, so you shouldn't really wait until the last moment when your paper is ready for publication to share what it is that you're researching. And that's probably one of the things that Martin does, although he's not here, so I can't really speak for him. But I've seen other researchers and kind of more established academics do that. So
I was just going to add from what's been put on the hack pad. Thank you, Anna. That one of the things they've mentioned is Martin, and I think also Sheila's mentioned that as well. That he does. His last book that he published was a combination of being open, so you could have a copy, but also you had the opportunity to then purchase it in a hardback version as well. But there are also things at the Open University that we have open access to, including journals that he would take full advantage of. So that's another one.
I think Sheila's comment is important, though, that in terms of ratings, that if somebody was publishing a landmark paper, something that was really important, the result of 5 years of new research, I would imagine they would want to go for the most prestigious journal they could find, and I'm guessing that wouldn't be open.
Yes, well, you see, but I mean, that's human nature in a sense. That's kind of the world of academia that we live in at the moment. But at the same time, that wouldn't stop you on thinking, yes, you have your research, you publish it in a super duper journal, but that's not going to stop you from writing a blog and saying exactly the same thing, but in different words, so that you're still sharing what your thinking has been, or what your results were. And I think it's about finding, if you really want to share it and disseminate, it's about finding ways that you're comfortable, in which you're comfortable sharing,
Can you hear me if I speak?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I was just I think you're absolutely right, Bea. I think it's what you're comfortable with, and I think when you're an early researcher, when you're just starting to do research, there's quite a lot you need to do in terms of confidence, but I've certainly found that blogging and being open in that way is a good way for me to keep writing. And I think when you're trying to get into the habit of writing, academically or not, just doing that is actually quite a good habit to get into, and making that open. And then I think then you have a bit of a choice, because yeah, you do have to sometimes make quite considered choices about where you're going to publish things, but you can share some of what you've been doing if you've been reflecting as you go along. But again, I think it's sort of something that we're all getting to grips with. And, you know, again, depending on your discipline and what journals you want to target, and your targets internally within your institution, within your department, then sometimes you're kind of closed down by other regulations around you. But I mean, I don't publish a huge amount. I mean, I'm kind of pretty academically lax, if you like, but I get quite a lot out of being an open practitioner and blogging. And I got again, sort of similar to Martin's experience, I was involved in a book that's kind of openly available. And it's available to buy. So the editors there, Alison Littlejohn and Chris Pegler, they did a deal with, I think it's Routledge Education, where they actually had a special issue of JIME, which is the Journal for Interactive Media. So there was a journal, so I think about 70% of the book was actually was openly available via JIME, and then, which was great, because one of the reasons I co-authored a chapter with some colleagues, and that was a real selling point to us, that our chapter would be openly available. So that, again, there's new models that are developing all the time, and I think it's probably worth speaking to publishers, particularly maybe more in the book publishing as opposed to the paper publishing side of things. I think there's a lot of things that we as kind of an academic community can actually have a different level of discussion now. And there's more examples of these kind of different modes of publishing as well, which I think is quite exciting.
Yeah, let me pick up what's going on here in the chat. So Martin asks, is academic writing the same in open as in traditional? And he says, I get the sense that it is a little less formal, right? And Guy says, God, hang on a second. It's not acceptable if open publishing is some sort of second class, restricted to blogs and lower rating open journals. So again, very interesting, right? I think it's. Oh, Sheila, do you want to go in?
Well, I was just saying, I can kind of get that. I think the second class thing is something that you can inflict on it. I mean, I don't write and think, oh, when I'm blogging, this is second class blogging. Sometimes I think, oh, I wish I'd written it again, but I probably think that about quite a lot of papers that I've had published as well. So I find it much more liberating, and sometimes I can be quite challenging, but I actually quite like being able to use different styles and different tones. So it kind of helps you, I think, in preparation for more formal writing, if you like. So I don't see open publishing as being second class, but I can sort of see where that argument comes from. But I think that in some ways that's quite an excuse for people not recognising that kind of scholarly practice, that digital scholarly practice, which I think is really, really important, because I've had so many discussions and made connections with people from something that I've written in a blog post that I would have never had before, and I know who's reading my blog posts, and I think I probably in many ways have much more impact than I do in formal publications, and that's not being addressed by universities, it's not being addressed by the ref. And you know, if we all just take the attitude, well, you know, we're not going to do it because it's only second class, then nothing will change. But I think there's a sort of a groundswell of people who are, you know, thinking, well, actually, I'm just going to do it because actually, as for my career and my digital scholarship, if you like, my digital identity, it really benefits me blogging and having that open practice.
Yeah, that's also one of the views on, you know, picking up again what Anna said, that it's a way of experimenting and finding their voice, which is quite important in this day and age.
Absolutely.
Think about it as well. We have examples of. I think it was Gronia Connell she's been blogging all her book chapters before publication. You know, so there is No, I would never. It's true when I write a blog, whether it is for the OVR Research Hub or something else. I mean, I do see it as okay, maybe slightly more informal in the sense that I'm kind of thinking of my audience. I'm kind of thinking of talking to whoever is reading that blog directly.
Sorry.
That's all right. Think also about it. When we talk about kind of traditional publishing, you always wait until the very last moment. So when all your research is done, then then that's the moment when you're ready to publish, and then you say, right, okay, write my paper, and there it goes. I submit it to a journal or whatever. While I see the idea of open dissemination in research is more like you start writing from the very beginning, from the moment when you're sharing your first ideas, your methodology, any thinking that goes through your head, so that you don't have to wait until the last moment and get that last, the final product is the thing that you share only through traditional publishing, I think. Right. Okay. Anybody else? Any more thoughts on this? It's only half 3, so.
I wasn't sure from the green and gold discussion where that stands. I mean, is that who makes that decision, or will both of them coexist? Is there going to be a decision point that all the institutions opt for gold or opt for green, or does government make the decision? I mean, or is it, as I say, a coexistence?
That's an interesting question. To be honest, I don't know. I would think. I would think you would probably, as an individual, you would go with your institution. So if the institution decides to go one way or another, that's somebody else has decided for you, which makes it easier, but maybe it's not exactly the right thing to do. So if we think about, I still go with Sorry, no, go on. Yeah, sorry. No, I thought somebody was coming in. That's what I was going to say now.
Who makes the decisions?
Right,
Okay.
I think if I can I think it's there's so many kind of economic and political considerations in the kind of gold and green access as well, because publishers make a lot of money out of us in university, and it's this mad system where we pay them to write, to contribute to their publications, and then they sell it back to us. I mean, the reasoning behind it's mad. No, I don't think if you were doing it now, and they probably can't. Why would they change that? It's a fantastic model for them. So I think there's a lot of kind of those power dynamics that actually, it's really complicated. I just put a link in the chat there that actually from Martin Weller about some recent discussions about market analysis and kind of the open access model and the market share and things like that. So I think it's very complicated. I think as a researcher yourself, I think you almost have to make a personal stand about what you're going to do. And I think you have to be quite realistic about how much you can do openly in terms of your career and your subject and what you're publishing about, whether that suits you, or whether you need to go down the kind of closed journals, if you like, and the traditional journals. So I think it comes back to where you are at that point of time. But I'm taking most people are who signed up for this course, we're all kind of interested in kind of sharing things and that kind of I suppose that being a bit more open, because I certainly believe that I can't really see a reason why anyone wouldn't publish anything openly. But I've kind of come to that conclusion over a number of years, and that's certainly very much, it's a core part of my professional identity now. But I think it does take a lot of it takes a lot of reflection, and at an institutional level. Because it's it's so complicated, and there's so much money involved in things, and in terms of refs and ratings and all this, that it's really messy. So sorry, that was just a bit of a rant there. I don't know if it made any sense, but I just wanted to add that.
It's true, but I know it is complicated. Of course, it's not going to be an easy solution. But I wonder, do you think as open researchers, or just simply as researchers, do we have a certain maybe moral obligation to actually publish as open as we can? I mean, I'll give you an example. I think it was Suprema in the forum that was talking about, you know, when you're in a developing country, that it's definitely more difficult to have access to any kind of research. Excuse me. But it doesn't have to be a developing country. I mean, my brother in Spain, he's a biologist. He's not attached to any university. He still does his you know, he needs to write his report and he needs to reference his whatever studies he's doing, and it's basically on a weekly basis that he sends me a note saying, can you please you know, have a look in the Open University Library if you have this, if you can find this particular paper, and can you please pass it on to me, you know? So I mean, and that's happening in I mean, that's Europe. So I do wonder, you know, as researchers, that's what I'm trying to think. Do we have that? Should we have that moral responsibility really to share everything we research?
Yeah, I think we should decide to be an open researcher. I think so. Yes. I mean, I think there are parts of your research that maybe don't need to be open, you know, and the kind of, when you're thinking about it, you don't need to, you know, it doesn't mean when you're open, it doesn't mean you share absolutely everything. And in fact, I just wrote that in a blog post this morning about, you know, there are times when, you know, I think some people say that you should put everything out there. And I was at a conference earlier this year where Stephen Downes was talking about openness, and it was quite funny because he was asking all of us, did we record our presentations? And, you know, people were like, no, we didn't. And he was saying, well, you know, if you want to be open and we want to share knowledge, then every time you make a presentation about anything, you should record it and you should put it on the web somewhere. Now, there was quite a funny comment by an Australian colleague who said, actually, well, if we had all that in the web, that would be like 1 million times worse than lolcats, because it would just be all this kind of noise. And I don't think we need to record anything, but, you know, just take it, this is not really about, you know, research and such, but if I go to a conference, I always make sure that my slides are up on SlideShare or are shared somewhere, so I'm putting one front there. So I think, again, in terms of your research, there are points when it's appropriate to share and be open about that. So if you are taking that point of view that you want to be an open researcher, then you have to have points where you do share. But you'll kind of know yourself when that is, when you've got something to say. You don't have to say, you know, have a dear diary, today I did this every day. That's you know, well, you can do that if you want to, but, you know, I don't think that. I think when you're an open practitioner, it's about making those kind of value judgments about when and what you share. And you'll be the best judge of that.
Yes, that's very true. I mean, I speak like at the OER Research Hub, we've made a conscious decision to be open from the very beginning, and I can say that it's been all positive. I mean, we've tried to share as much as we can because we are an open concept, and it's been all positive. With one of the things that we've managed to do is create a whole network of you know, called think-alike people, but I don't see any disadvantages in actually being as open as we've been, for instance, in the OER Research Hub. Anybody, I don't know, anybody can speak about any other project and how?
Yeah, I read one approach which seemed to allow you to have your cake and eat it, which was the formal closed journals go through a very rigid process to accept papers and go through peer review and whatever. And therefore, one could write a paper to the point of a final draft, but not at the stage it could be submitted formally because it didn't comply in some way, and circulate that openly, and then, having had reaction to that, write a slightly amended final draft, which would then be published in the traditional way, which would seem to, earn the points for the published paper, but also have the benefit of a virtually identical circulation openly. That seemed to be probably getting 90% of the benefit of both streams.
Yeah, that's very true. Okay, will we? Because I'm slightly conscious of the time. Will we move? Will we move to the subject of licenses? One of the things we tried to do this week was, I mean, not exactly to introduce open licenses to you, because you probably have come across Creative Commons before, but we would. What the idea was to get people doing a bit of reflection on which one was the right open license for them, for instance. And there's an interesting comment in the forum. I apologize because I forget who it is that was. But somebody asked the question: is it true that kind of traditional academics favor CC by NC? So we get into the do we make our research non-commercial? Any thoughts on that? No? Okay, I'll give you my thoughts. For a start. Okay, the idea is that you choose a license and you say, right, okay, I want my stuff. I want other people to use my stuff. This is the way I want to share. So I'd say we all go for CC BY, and then it comes from them. It comes a little bit more complicated. I'd like to think that we really think of the implications of choosing a license, but I must confess that I did go for. On my blog, there is a CC BY non-commercial license, and it's having a look at the conversations in the forums that made me think exactly, right, okay, well, what do I mean by non-commercial? And my thinking was, well, if anyone wants to make money out of what I've written, okay, fair enough, but they probably should be able to contact me, no problem, let me know, and there's some kind of negotiation. And I can say, yeah, of course you can go and publish this and make money out of it, right? But then, I'd say to what extent is that right? I don't know. But then I said, what is exactly non-commercial? Because I share my photographs on Flickr, right? And my photographs have a CC BY non-commercial license. But then at the same time, Flickr themselves, they have lots of ads, and they, so I'm taking it that, Flickr, yes, as a platform, they're fantastic for others to share their photographs, but they're making money out of these ads that do happen on Flickr. So I understand, the more you think about it, the more complicated it gets, I think.
I think it does, and I think it'll depend on what kind of research you're doing and what kind of funding you get and what your outputs are. I think a lot of people's initial reaction is to put a non-commercial one on, and often I think when you're having discussions at an institutional level, there are some senior management who always think, well, maybe they live more in hope of anything that something's going to make lots of money. So if you give it away, you might have given away the kind of like the crown jewels, if you like. So again, I think it comes down to just making those decisions. I'm like you. I just have an attribution, CC license on my blog. If anyone can make money out of that, then well, good on you. So again, I think it depends on kind of the context of your research as well. But I think that the key thing is to have the attribution, because that's the key thing in research anyway, isn't it? So making sure that you've got an attribution for it, and then whether you want to have a share alike or a repurposing and take it that again depend on the actual output that you're putting there.
But isn't it very dangerous to have attribution and an ability to change your work which you can't control, because somebody could still give you attribution with a product which you wouldn't recognize or support.
Yeah. But the thing is, I think if someone was going to do that, they probably, well, yeah, there's probably not an awful lot you can do about it anyway, even with or without the light. You know, people who kind of really take something the wrong way. I don't know. It's one of those dilemmas. But yeah, now I'm really worrying. Now I might have to go back and have another look now. Maybe have a proper think about that.
If you look at the version of David Cameron's conference speech that's circulating on Twitter, where they've edited various comments into a horribly right-wing rant, I think it's a good example of what can happen when somebody has free rein to modify your work.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, again, that's why you need to think about it. It's never easy with licensing, though. That's the thing. It's never an easy decision. But I think, again, one of the things about open is that we can put an awful lot of barriers up to ourselves and saying, well, we won't do this because what if someone did this, or what if they did that? And actually, you know, for most of us, the chances of that happening are pretty small. So I think, again, this comes back to sort of confidence and actually thinking, do you know what, I'm making a conscious decision to publish openly. And, you know, if people, well, yeah, anyway.
I'm just thinking in the arts and humanities, being open is one thing, but on the other hand, what you produce is your creative capital, and you can't give it away. And it's complicated enough in the arts with issues of copyright and people just taking images and using them, and if that's your only source of income, but still you do have to be open in order to make a network for your ideas. It's just the more I'm listening to this conversation, the more I'm realizing how incredibly complicated it actually is to really get it right. And you can't just make this one decision and then it will always follow through that way. Probably it's going to have to change, and you'll make different decisions and probably some mistakes as well along the way.
There's also one of the things that I've come to understand is that when you release something and you release it on a Creative Commons license, in a way, yes, it's because you want to share it and you want to tell people how you want them to use your resource, right? But I think what I've come to understand is that when you do that, what you're doing to some extent is you're losing control over your creation. So I don't know if it is the same thing, you know, when it's only art and humanities as you say, but it's this idea. It's like, okay, I put it out there. Maybe it's not my baby anymore, because I mean, how difficult it is really to trace. Even if we just say, okay, Creative Commons attribution. How do we make? Can we be really sure that somebody's using that stuff attribute?
I did see one artist who seemed to have a very good solution. He made a moving image, which is something that I do, and on his website he had published some pieces under the Creative Commons license and positively encouraged people to download them and adapt them and do what they liked with them. And he had other pieces that were protected, and it was quite a unique solution that I'm thinking of copying. I guess that's one way of doing it. You mark what's open, and you protect what you actually need to protect, because as we've all agreed, you can't just throw away your research and not follow through with it. You can't give it away, all of it.
I'm just going to pick up something that's on the hack pad, and one of my favourite words. So, Dixie, I'm just going to pick up your point because I thought it was really good. So, kind of going with your argument there about relinquishing control. She just makes the point that, you know, if you believe that open means making your stuff available to remix, then you don't get to choose what people do with it. So it could be awesome and it could be awful, and that's kind of the risk you take. And the same way as, Guy, I think you made the point of no risk, no reward. How do people feel about that?
Think about it as well. Maybe I'm being slightly optimistic, but if you put something out there and somebody misinterprets what you're saying and they say that you said exactly the opposite of what you wanted to say, can you not actually come in and say, actually, you got it wrong? So you know, you still have the possibility of correcting the other person and then building a dialogue and then moving things forward. I don't know. Maybe it's just me optimistic. But
Well, I think you have to be optimistic. I mean, it is difficult, and again, I think it's a level of confidence for practitioners about what you want to do. And sometimes, you know, if you're just starting out in this and you haven't done anything particularly open before, then you can start in quite a small way and then grow. But again, I think, you know, there's some really great points made there about, you know, people in the arts and humanities, you know, particularly about thinking what you want to do. But yeah, it's kind of a, God, it's a journey. We're all on a journey, aren't we? But it is like that. You have to kind of feel your way around, and it does like everything else. It depends on the context. But you know, in academia, when we do research, whether it's you know, in kind of traditional closed journals, if you like, when we're at conferences, we talk about it in an open fashion. We're still having that discussion. So I mean, I firmly believe that, you know, open publishing can help us widen that discussion and widen that discourse. And I think as you know, all universities, all academics, we have a responsibility, we have a civic responsibility in a lot of ways to extend our academic conversations. So, you know, but we can do that. We don't all have to start being open, completely open all the time. You know, we can do it in an incremental way, but we have to keep trying, and it is risky and it is quite scary, and we will make mistakes and we'll get burned, but that happens anyway. That's kind of part of life. So, you know, I think we just have to take those risks on board, but it's very easy to become very precious and not to do something just because it's easier not to be open in some ways. But the benefits of actually being open, I think for the vast majority of people, probably do outweigh the, you know, not doing it.
yeah, so let me pick up this comment here on the chat from Dixie. She says, I think a lot of the objections to open come from fear. Won't get tenure, stuff will get stolen, won't be able to get paid, etc. People who take the lead seem to be okay, which is, yeah. There's also, I mean, again, speaking from my own point of view, I think I benefit so much from others sharing stuff, from others being open, that has helped me to start being open as well. You know, so if others are doing it and they are okay, as Dixie says, nothing's happened to them, you know, I can do it as well. And like Sheila says, you know, you choose how much and you choose when to stop to start being open and all that. So yeah, by all means, good stuff. Anybody wants to come in and say something else?
It sounds to me a little bit as if open publishing is really a proxy for people's attitude to the ownership of knowledge, that if people believe their research is contributing to a common fund of knowledge, that is the reason they're doing it, then they're going to be pro-open research. If they are more keen on being the king of their academic niche, if you like, acknowledged as the world expert, invited to every conference on earth, then they're probably going to be closed. So maybe what we're really seeing is open publishing as a mirror of people's attitude to academic research itself.
Yes, I think actually that's a very good point, and I'm going to take that point to actually close the Hangout, if you don't mind. We have, okay, if you haven't contributed to the forum discussions, by all means go on and do it. There is still time. Thanks everyone for coming in. I hope I'll see you again next week. So next week will be the last week of the School of Open Course. We're talking about the reflection and we're talking about evaluation. So it'll be very much about evaluating your own experience in the course, but also, you know, how open have you been? How open can you be? How open will you be in the future? So I hope that's open dissemination, open proposal is actually part of so you wake up tomorrow morning and say, yes, I'm gonna publish this little bit of my research on Twitter or on a blog or whatever. So again, thank you, Nats, for being here with me. Thank you all for your contributions. I hope you're all well and you have a nice evening. And hopefully I'll see you next week. Thank you very much again.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Bye.